Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound Podcast, a show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And UFC Fight Night Sterling taking on Zalal is here, and you know what we're here to do. Break down the entire thing, starting off in the early prelims, head into the main event. Carlos's breakdowns are in, and let's dive right in to the early prelims. And kicking things off at UFC Fight Night Sterling taking on Zalal, we've got Julia Polastri taking on Talita, Alencar. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button and give me Polastri in this matchup. I think she's very aggressive on the feet, Muay Thai style striker. She carries power in the hands, and she carries that power late into the third round. And there's no secret, obviously she does struggle to defend takedowns, and I think that her takedown defense is going to be on full display here against Alencar. Alencar, a woman that wants to come in and take you to the mat and use her high-level credentialed Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt to be able to try to submit you. Most of her victories coming via way of tap out, but I think Polastri here is going to be too physically dominant on the feet and in her ability to defend the takedowns. I think when you go and look at the recent performances where she struggled to defend the takedowns against women like Lupi Godinez has much better wrestling than Talita Alencar. Alencar is more of a jiu-jitsu style takedown practitioner. She doesn't have the wrestling here, in my opinion, to be able to get Polastri to the ground early and often. Although Talita Alencar will dance around on the outside and look to mix in grappling, I think that Julia Polastri here on the feet is going to do too much damage in the eyes of the judges, and I think she's going to be able to back up Talita Alencar with her striking. She has nice knees in the clinch. She has, as I said, a Muay Thai base, so once the fight does tend to get into the clinch, which a lot of Alencar's fights will happen, I do think that Polastri will be able to mix in her clinch striking here, mixing in elbows, mixing in knees to the body, and I think that will wear on kind of Alencar as this fight goes on. And I think Talita Alencar is a female that if she gets this fight to the ground, she will have success in terms of the BJJ, but I just don't think she's going to be able to do that often enough to be able to really win a decision here over Polastri. I think she's going to have the more damaging moments. I think she's going to be the one hitting much harder. 7 years younger as well. I think she's more physically dominant, slight edge in the reach department as well. So give me Julia Polastri here to get the card off right here for the Ground and Pound podcast, and let's see who Carlos has got in this matchup.
Okay, pretty short breakdown for me, but I'm going to take Polastri to get it done. I just feel that Polastri, decent takedown defense, not the best. Alencar, when it comes to takedowns, not the best either. Her wrestling is lacking, and she's going to have an issue trying to get this to the ground where she would probably be with the biggest advantage. And without that, I feel that the way she's going to get Polastri to the ground is probably to clip her, wobble her, get her down to the mat. But even then, like in her past fights, Alencar, she's actually been forced to fight, and she picks up the pace, and she's pretty game on the feet too. And I just feel that Polastri, she's tough on the feet. She can take a strike. She can give a strike. She looks pretty good, and I just feel that she's gonna force Alencar to have to fight technical and fight smooth, and I don't think she can do that. I mean, the wilder Alencar gets, it's probably more to her advantage to make this a brawl and cause a little chaos, but I think Polastri is going to be able to hurt her on the feet and take advantage of this one. So Polastri to get this one done.
And next up at UFC Fight Night Sterling taking on Zalal, we've got Victor Valenzuela taking on Max Payne Griffin, and I think this is a very 50-50 matchup, and obviously with most of Griffin's fights, they tend to go to decision. They tend to be split decisions and razor close, and I think if you look at Victor, obviously he did lose on Dana White's Contender Series, losing via knockout in the second round. He's a formidable kickboxer, interim champion over Fury FC, and I think if you look at this stylistic matchup here against Max Griffin, I think Griffin should have the volume advantage. I think he should be able to be the better wrestler, and I am going to lean ever so slightly here to Max Payne Griffin to get this one done. I think he's going to be the busier fighter. I think in this stylistic matchup that Victor is a guy that likes to throw tight hooks. I think he's undersized for 170, and I think that Griffin just being that little bit bigger, having a slight edge in the reach department, and his ability to mix in takedowns and grapple here is going to serve him well to be able to get this victory here inside the meta apex. I think if you look at Griffin, obviously fighting the higher level guys, he tends to struggle, and he does pull off some split decisions at times being the busier guy, and I think he can have a little bit more output on the feet, mix in takedowns here. And remember, Venezuela is not a guy that won on Dana White's Contender Series. He did not get a contract. He is stepping in here to be able to fill a spot in this fight over at the Meta Apex, whereas Max Griffin is UFC level. He does get victories inside this big promotion. He's fought the who's who. He's much more experienced, and I think we see a veteran performance here. He's known for having a good chin as well, and I think here when you look, this reach advantage along with the fact that the way he throws his strikes, he's very light on his feet along the outside, and he throws straight shots right down the pipe, whereas Victor likes to throw sort of hooks, tight, crisp hooks, and I think him being first to the target with the straight shots here, I think should serve him well. I think he can have more output, mix in the wrestling, and ultimately have the better cardio. So give me Max paying Griffin to get this one done and get back in the win column. And let's see who Carlos has got in this matchup.
In this one, I'm going to favor Valenzuela slightly. Being the younger, hungrier fighter, I'm assuming, that likes to impose himself on his opponents. My only question is if he can't beat you up on the feet, what's plan B? I haven't really seen him try to take anything to the match. He does have submission finishes, but he's likes to keep coming forward and he likes to keep eating shots, especially in the fight against Michael Oliveira. He didn't have an answer for the straight, powerful punches that were coming at him, and he just all he tried to do was fight a little harder, fight a little tougher, and he didn't use any head movement, didn't use a high guard. He just kept coming forward and eating those shots. And against Max Griffin, even though he does throw straight shots and he has that long reach, I just feel like he doesn't have the big pop that was making Valenzuela a little nervous to come in against someone like Oliveira. And I feel that Griffin could hurt him, in volume, or if Valenzuela doesn't see the punch coming. But I feel that Valenzuela does have some solid defense. And if he doesn't have to worry about big power coming at him, maybe that's what flustered him in that fight against Oliveira. I felt like he's going to be able to block the shots, parry him, catch and release. He's going to be able to get in on Griffin, and Griffin's going to try to use takedowns because that's what he does. He throws some shots, he mixes in takedowns, whether he gets them or not. It's just to throw you off, and I think Valenzuela is going to be able to defend those. I think he's going to be able to, like I said, catch and release, and Griffin is going to be forced to go for those takedowns because he's going to get hit with those counter shots, and I feel that Valenzuela is going to capitalize from there and maybe not get the finish. I think it's probably going to go to decision because Griffin, he's a tough guy, he's game, he's ready to mix it up, but I just feel that forcing Griffin to shoot because you're out striking him on the feet, you're probably going to catch him with a knee or a straight shot coming in or an uppercut, and I think Valenzuela's counters is probably going to be there waiting for him. Just the pressure of him walking him down is probably going to be enough to force Griffin to feel like he's being cornered. So I'm going to take Victor Valenzuela to get this one done.
And next up at UFC Fight Night Sterling taking on Zalal, we've got Jafel, the Pasta Fialho, taking on Cody Durden. Durden obviously stepping in here on somewhat short notice, replacing Lucas Rocha. And I got to say, I'm a little bit worried about Durden here in this matchup. I think Fialho is a nightmare matchup for him on the feet or on the ground. Durden on a 4-fight skid. He's been submitted, he's been knocked out, and he's been losing unanimous decisions. And I don't see him stepping in here on short notice and coming in and getting the upset here against Fialho. Fialho, a guy that can get it done on the feet or on the ground. In the boxing, he rips to the body and then comes upstairs. He does swing a little bit with reckless abandonment, putting a lot of effort into his shots, but that's because he's not fearful of the takedown, because he has faith in his jiu-jitsu and faith in his ability once the fight does hit the floor, and I think he trusts his power in his hands. And in this particular matchup here against Durden, I do think that Durden is the better wrestler, but I do think he's going to be worried about the submissions here of Fialho. Fialho does a great job of being able to mix in his jiu-jitsu to cause scrambles to get into dominant positions, and the way that I see this fight playing out is if Cody Durden comes in here reckless, he could get caught on the feet by the power of Jafel Fialho, and if it does end up hitting the mat, that I think Fialho is going to be able to find the submission here, and I could see Durden getting tired, because of the short notice, second or third round, shooting in sloppy takedowns and getting front choked, whether that be a guillotine, anaconda, Das choke here of Jafel Fialho. And I think the full camp here is really going to serve Fialho well, who's going to be able to scramble if it does hit the mat. And I think on the feet, he's going to be able to push a pace and really land big shots here on Durden and make it 5 losses in a row here for Cody Durden, which is a shame. I think he's UFC level. I think he's got a lot more to give. But taking these fights on short notice against killers and finishers like Jafel Fialho are only going to end poorly. I feel confident in Fialho to get this one done. I'm going to say via submission. Let's see if Carlos agrees with me in this one.
Okay, in this one, I'm going to take Jafel Filho to get it done. Filho looks good. He's quick to slap a submission on. He's very good at controlling his opponents and taking their back. And he's had a lot of success with that. Once he gets the back, he starts to fish for that rear naked choke. And he's had a lot of success with that in the past. But he's got solid striking. He does hold his guard low, which is worrisome. But usually he's the aggressor, and he's the one that's always imposing himself with the hard strikes that he has. And, when it comes to Cody Durden, besides the overhand that he has, that he can he can wobble you with. What worries me the most is that if Durden can get his wrestling going and he can get a takedown, if he can get Filho to the ground, it's not the fact that he can keep Filho down. It's the fact that Filho is just going to wrap his legs, close the guard and just play jiu-jitsu from there. And that one worries me a bit because he can take it could take him a while to play jiu-jitsu for a little bit, and then he's going to have, he's going to notice it's not working. Then he's going to try to scramble and create some space and get up. But a huge chunk of time could be taken off the clock, and he could lose a couple rounds or a round that way. And if he gets taken down multiple times, he could lose the fight that way. So that's the only thing that troubles me is once he gets down to the ground, he wants to use his jiu-jitsu off his back. But when it's not successful, it might be too late to scramble to get back to your feet. But I don't really see that happening, with somebody like Cody Durden. He can pull something like this off, but in his last couple fights, he's had he's been struggling a little bit, and he's on a bit of a skid, and he's taken a lot of beatings in those skids, and a couple of them actually. And I feel that the striking of Filho, will pretty much get this fight done. Like he strikes hard. He throws hard, is what I mean, and he has good striking. He changes levels with his strikes, and he has good cardio to go with it, and he pressures you. And I think that just the pressure and the volume of the punches, not even the volume, just the the power of the strikes is going to start to slow Durden down, because it has happened in the past. Durden, he can become like all heart in the fight, and unfortunately, he's getting up there in age. He's had a couple wars, and it might not work out in his favor to take these shots continuously. So I think that just the pressure, the aggression, and the power from Filho striking is probably going to get this one done.
And next up at UFC Fight Night Sterling taking on Zalal. We've got Mayra Bueno Silva taking on Michelle Montague. Montague training over at American Top Team. A good gym to be able to come in here and get the victory over Mayra Bueno Silva. She is known for her grappling pedigree. 6 of her 7 victories all coming by a way of submission. And I do think in terms of the grappling here, she should have the advantage. She should be able to get this fight to the ground. But I do question the striking pedigree here of Montague. If you look at Mayra Bueno Silva, she might be getting taken down in her previous losses, 4 losses in a row now, but she's getting controlled by these wrestlers. But in terms of the striking, she is having success. I think she hits harder. I think she's definitely going to be the one looking to do the more damaging shots on the feet. It just depends if Silva can really defend the takedowns here of Michelle Montague. I do think in this fight that we're going to see the sort of harder hitting Silva be able to land shots on Montague, but Montague's tough. She's shown that she can take a punch and keep walking forward. I just question the striking here of Montague. She tends to leave her chin up in the air. She tends to exchange in the pocket, and it kind of has me a little bit worried that the hard-hitting Silva might catch her here and be able to kind of drop her and take control on the ground, or be able to get some sort of TKO victory to sort of save her career. But give me Montague here. I think if you go back and look at the recent performances of Silva, she has been taken down. She has been controlled. Some wrestlers, some not. But once this fight hits the mat, she tends to struggle off of her back. She's playing jiu-jitsu. She cannot get back to her feet. And a wrestler and a strong grappler like Michelle Montague is going to be able to capitalize. I think she should be able to get this fight to the ground often enough to be able to rack up control time here and win a unanimous decision. I don't think it will go into the submission realm for Montague. I think we're going to be looking at another decision. She was able to go the distance in her UFC debut against Luana Carolina, and I think that's what we're going to be looking at here. I think we see the judges' scorecards. Michelle Montague winning enough top control to win rounds on the judges' scorecards, landing the occasional elbow, looking to transition into dominant positions as Mayra Bueno Silva plays jiu-jitsu off of her back and struggles to get back to her feet. So give me Michelle Montague here to get this one done, make it 2-0 inside the UFC. And let's see who Carlos has got in this one.
In this one, I'm going to take Michelle Montague to get it done. I think Montague is going to have the advantage in the wrestling and the grappling advantage as well. I do feel she's got strong takedowns, good top control. I think that she has good ground and pound that she's displayed. I think she's always busy on top. And when this fight gets to the ground, I feel that Bueno Silva's also got to be worried about getting back to her feet because Montague can't wait to throw the hooks in and get the lion tamer again. You know, she's won tons of fights by rear naked choke. And I feel that if this fight hits the mat, she's going to be able to do that as well with someone like Silva. Even though Silva is not a slouch on the ground as well, she does have some good grappling. She does have good jiu-jitsu. I just feel, you know, I guess you can call it a straight breakdown. Like, I don't really have to get into what Silva does. She's been in a little bit of a skid. I think it's 5 or 4 fights that she's lost in a while, and a lot of them is because she's been taken down as well. And I just feel that, you know, Montague, she has the wrestling to be able to control Silva on the ground, to get her to the ground. And I feel that even if she's on top, in Silva's guard, I don't think Silva poses any threat because Montague, like I said, has the wrestling to position her body in certain areas where she knows that submissions aren't going to be a threat. And yeah, those are the simple reasons I'm going to take Michelle Montague to get it done.
And next up at UFC Fight Night Sterling taking on Zalal. We've got Jackson McVey taking on Sedriques Dumas. And I got to throw this one out there. I think this is very kill or be killed. Both guys are either going to finish you or get finished themselves. And I got to say, both guys to me are not UFC level. So this is going to be a very tricky fight to predict. I'm going to go with Jackson McVey, though. I think there's a hole in Dumas' grappling. I think he picked up MMA far too late in terms of the game. And I think that the game has passed him by in terms of the grappling and the submission department. I think he's going to get out-wrestled in most of his fights. I think he's going to get taken down, either clubbed and subbed or ground and pound. And McVey does a good job of pressuring early. He's very aggressive. Most of his victories do come inside of round one, of him being able to get into dominant positions, get in the face, get into the clinch, and being able to drag his opponents down or find in the clinch some sort of knockout elbow or knees to the body. And I do think here that with Dumas, you know, he is the more technical striker. He stays very fundamental in the kickboxing, but I think that once he gets pressured, he tends to struggle with being pressured. And Jackson McVey, obviously at 6'4", he is a very big middleweight. I think he can come in here. I think he can get to the grappling, and I think he can show off his grappling chops, obviously losing back-to-back fights now inside the UFC via submission to Zach Reese and to Bruno Ferreira. I think he can come in here and he can get the victory against Dumas as he's the better grappler in this matchup. Obviously, Dumas, you know, he is the more credentialed in terms of the kickboxing, but I don't think he has enough stopping power to really test the chin of McVey. I think McVey can hold his own in the stand-up. I think he can pressure Dumas, and I think he can come in here, maybe take the back or get some sort of, you know, dominant position on the ground, get this fight to the ground, and ultimately find the ground and pound victory or the submission victory early in round 1 or 2. Give me Jackson McVey here to get this one done. Not super confident, though. As I said, both guys not super, you know, UFC level, not super talented. And even if you go back and look at Jackson McVey's career, the one loss he had on the regional scene in terms of his amateur career was against Wes Schultz, who is obviously UFC level. Most of his victories are coming against low-level guys. Dumas has not been able to look good inside the UFC either. So very much a coin flip fight, very much a fight, you know, that I see either guy getting the finish and getting their hand raised inside the distance. But give me Jackson McVey here to get this one done via submission with his ground game. And let's see who Carlos has got in this one.
In this one, I'm going to take McVey to get it done. Both guys are struggling. McVey looking for his first win, trying to make it happen, but you know he's fought the tough competition in his first 2 fights. McVey looks hungry. He applies the pressure, comes forward, but just hasn't gotten over the hump. Dumas looks very unmotivated in his fights, although he does have skill, but, you know, just can't get it done against the better opposition and somehow finds the savvy to pull out a victory against lesser opposition like, well, I say lesser. I'm kind of surprised he's beaten guys like Cody Brundage. I figured Brundage would be able to run through him. But I just feel that McVey wants it. And skill-wise, I feel that the pressure of McVey is going to be what gets it done. He's going to be able to come forward. He's going to be able to hurt Dumas, whereas Dumas is probably going to be a little bit more defensive. And when McVey comes forward, he's going to be trying to get this to the ground. And I don't think that's going to be a good idea. I think that sets Dumas up for more ground and pound than anything. For some reason, it's just very hard to take him. He does have skill. He has the ability, but I just feel he lacks the motivation to try to hang in a fight and get it done. So I'm going to take McVey to get this one done.
And next up at UFC Fight Night, Sterling taking on Zalal. We've got Rodolfo, the black belt, Hunter Vieira taking on Aaran Carlos. And I got to say, this is a very 50-50 fight. I think a lot of people are going to instantly run to the Vieira side. Obviously, that high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a guy that can get you to the mat and sub you. And he is called the black belt hunter for a reason. Very credentialed on the ground. But since joining the UFC, obviously, he's shown an improvement in his boxing, but still lacks the ability to get fights to the ground, which is where he would be able to dominate. And I think if you look on the side of Aaran McConico, he obviously has shown, that I think he's being underestimated. I think he is at a good gym over at MMA Lab. Obviously has Jared Cannonier in his corner, and I think he's the much more explosive striker. I think he's a little bit more dynamic on the feet, and I think he's a little bit more comfortable in the wrestling as well. You go back and look at the Cody Brundage performance. He was able to defend a lot of the takedowns of Cody Brundage, who has decent wrestling and probably, or arguably, better wrestling than Rodolfo Vieira does. So I think this one's a very sloppy fight, in my opinion. I think we're going to see a lot of clinching. We're going to see a lot of cage work. This one's going to be a boring fight, in my opinion. And I think Rodolfo Vieira is going to be shooting in for takedowns, not getting them, and it's going to cause him to get tired. So give me Aaran McConico here. I think what this fight's going to look like is Aaran McConico is going to have the better moments on the feet. He has a nice high kick. He's definitely faster in terms of the hand speed on the feet, and I think that he can just land enough shots, defend enough takedowns here to have enough moments to win on the judges' scorecards. And as fights go on, due to that Rodolfo Vieira, sort of huge build in terms of his size and his sort of muscle bellies, he does tend to gas. He does tend to get a little bit fatigued in there, and as the fight goes on, he tends to slow down. So I think that Aaran McConico is going to be able to defend the takedowns, wear on the gas tank of Vieira here, and it regrets me to say it, I think he might be able to pull off the victory here. Don't love it. I like it, but don't love it. But give me Aaran McConico here to get this one done on the judges' scorecards, having the bigger, more impactful moments on the feet, defending the takedowns as Vieira slows down as this one goes. Carlos, who you got in this one, brother?
This one, I'm going to take Rodolfo Vieira to get it done. I think Vieira's striking is very technical now, but doesn't throw big, heavy shots to most likely save energy for takedowns and the grappling aspect of the game. I think McConico's takedown defense isn't the most impressive, but it's better than Vieira's ability to actually wrestle. But, as I say that, I'm thinking about Vieira in the clinch, and he was able to get guys down. He was able to get some wrestlers down, like Andre Petrosky. He wasn't able to hold him down, but he was able to hold down Cody Brundage, and he was able to get the submission that way. And those are two guys that are highly credentialed wrestlers, in comparison to McConico. So I feel at some point this is going to get to the mat. And before that point, I feel that McConico's not even dangerous at that point. I mean, anybody could be dangerous. You can catch him with a high kick, you can catch him with spinning back fist, something. But I don't feel that McConico throws the shots to hurt you. I think he just throws to touch. Whereas Vieira, he's a big guy for the weight class, so no matter what he throws, you're going to feel it. And that could be pressuring to McConico, and it might force him to fight a little wilder, probably overextend into shots, and it's going to allow Vieira to get closer, get in that clinch, get a body lock, get some type of trips, and get this fight to the ground. And once he does that, he's probably going to get the end, the ending that he likes. He'll probably get the submission, but I do feel that, McConico doesn't really possess that one-and-done type power, with his punches, and I think that's something that Vieira is going to be able to capitalize on because his striking has improved, and he's not going to feel as nervous coming forward. So I'm going to take Vieira to get this one done.
And next up at UFC Fight Night, Sterling taking on Zalal. We've got Ryan Superman Spann taking on Marcus Buchecha. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button for this heavyweight banger. Give me Marcus Buchecha here. There's no secret that Buchecha, obviously in the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, former Hall of Famer, the guy is elite. We know that obviously he's very decorated on the ground, 13-time world champion. And Ryan Spann, he likes to get it done inside the distance. There's no secret. He's a very kill or be killed fighter. He has a nice guillotine. He has power in the hands. But I think in this particular fight, you've got to be, on the side of Buchecha. I do not trust Ryan Superman Spann here at heavyweight. He has looked an absolute shadow of his former self from 205. And since moving up to heavyweight, I don't necessarily like what I've seen. Obviously, he was able to get his last guillotine victory over Lucas Brzeski, but I'm not overly impressed with that particular victory over Lucas Brzeski. He's a guy that, he's not necessarily UFC level in my opinion. And Superman Spann to me just looks like a blown up kind of fat version of himself at 205. Marcus Buchecha, he does have nice level changes. He is a good athlete even at 36 years old. Although obviously he's not known for having good striking. He tries to stay reasonably fundamental in the striking, something that he's still learning at 5-2 in his MMA career. And I do think in this fight, at some point, this fight is going to hit the mat early. He is going to be able to get a takedown in the first or second round here. And I don't trust Spann on the feet to be able to capitalize with the striking. I think what's going to happen in this particular matchup here is Buchecha is going to shoot for an early takedown. Spann might even pull guillotine. That's how low I think his fight IQ is at this moment in time. And I do think that Marcus Buchecha, once the fight hits the mat, is going to be able to control Spann on the ground and capitalize here, finding the submission and ultimately getting the victory. Don't get me wrong, I do think that Ryan Superman Spann should have the advantages in the striking. I just don't necessarily trust his cardio and what he's looked like in his recent performances here at heavyweight to be able to capitalize on the lack of striking from Marcus Buchecha. I think once this fight gets out of the second round and it might get to the third, if Buchecha isn't able to get the takedowns, I think both guys are going to be super gassed. I don't think that Spann's going to be able to have enough pop in his hands to be able to capitalize on Buchecha's, kind of lack of ability to get the finish on the ground. But I'm going to say that Marcus Buchecha gets this one done in the first or second round by a submission with the takedowns. I wouldn't be surprised if Spann is able to defend or stay alive, and then ultimately Buchecha wins on the judges' scorecards. Sloppy heavyweight fight, not super confident, but give me Marcus Buchecha here to get the takedown and get his first UFC win. Carlos, who you got, brother?
I'm going to take Buchecha over Ryan Spann in this one. Even though I'm not very confident in him winning, I think that this fight can go either way. Buchecha, he can take a shot. So if it goes into round 2 or later into round 1 and Ryan Spann, throws a couple of heavy shots to try to get him out of there, I feel Buchecha is going to be able to get him to the ground and probably be able to get the submission. I feel Spann, he'll probably get finished by sub in round 2 or 3 because, he tends to get visibly and noticeably fatigued as the fight goes on, but so does Buchecha. So the longer the fight goes, I think the worse it can be for Spann, but, it can be just as bad for Buchecha, but I think the fact that he's getting ready to drive through to get takedowns, it's probably a little bit better. He doesn't have to worry about the power coming at him as much because, like I said, Spann's probably going to be a little bit fatigued. He's going to get a little sloppy. And Buchecha, although he tends to get gassed, if he can get on top and hold position, he's probably going to be able to at least control Spann and get some form of ground and pound, something to win the round besides top control. I can see Buchecha able to shoot for a double, get that takedown, and make him work. Make Ryan Spann have to work a lot in the first round, so in the second round he's a little gassed. But this will compromise Buchecha's cardio too. That's why I don't feel too confident in this one, because both of them tend to have a little bit cardio issues. I think that Ryan Spann, although he does look to have the better striking, I feel that, if it doesn't finish in round 1, he's not going to get Buchecha out of there. So I'm going to take Buchecha, for that reason. I feel that he can take a shot, he can come back, he can be a little bit more resilient than Spann as the fight goes on.
And next up at UFC Fight Night Sterling taking on Zalal. We've got Montel Jackson taking on Raoni Barcelos. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button, as I think this is a great matchup on this UFC Fight Night card. Montel Jackson, obviously known for his power, his range, and his reach in this division here at bantamweight. And Jackson obviously coming off that loss to Davidson Figueiredo, where he was out-wrestled and controlled enough over in Brazil for him to lose that split decision. But Jackson has, a decent amount of power due to that reach advantage that he does carry. Obviously can be a little bit low output at times. He does have nice trips in the clinch, and I think this 8.5-inch reach advantage here generates a lot of power and can really be used in terms of the long-range weapons here. And when we talk about Barcelos, he is a guy that tends to sort of bend over, especially sort of rounding his back, keeping a very tight, high guard, trying to stay defensively sound. He has good, crisp boxing. And when you talk about the wrestling here of Barcelos, he is a 5-time Brazilian national champion, along with a 2-time South American champion in wrestling. And I do think that Jackson here, obviously that people are going to look at that previous fight with Davidson Figueiredo, and they're going to assume that Barcelos here is going to come out, look to grapple, look to wrestle, and look to take this fight to the ground. That nullifies that reach advantage that Jackson has. And as I mentioned as well, Jackson at time can be a little bit low output. In this particular matchup here, I think Barcelos might come in, look to mix in some wrestling, and I think that Jackson here, from his previous performance, is going to stuff those takedowns and make some adjustments since his recent loss to Figueiredo. I think he's going to come, look to keep this one on the feet, use his long-range weapons, and ultimately find the kill shot here against Barcelos, having the bigger moments. I do think Barcelos is tough. I do think that he'll probably make it to the judges' scorecards, but I do think that Barcelos on the feet is going to be a discrepancy, especially in the power. Barcelos likes to slip, throw uppercuts. He will mix in low calf kicks as well, which I think will be a great weapon against the taller, rangier Jackson. But I do think that the teeps up the middle and those long-range jabs from Jackson are going to cause Barcelos problems. And I do think that he carries a little bit more power in the hands that Barcelos is not going to be able to wear very well. I do think here Barcelos can definitely get ahead on the judges' scorecards if he throws a ton of volume and mixes in the grappling. But I think that Jackson comes in here, makes adjustments since his previous fight, and he keeps this one on the feet, and he has the bigger moments, the more impactful shots on the feet here against Barcelos. So give me Montel Jackson here, keeping this one standing, landing the bigger shots with that 8.5-inch reach advantage. And let's see who Carlos has got in this fight.
In this one, I'm going to take Montel Jackson to get it done. Raoni Barcelos, he's had a lot of success in his last couple fights, using his wrestling to his advantage. I feel that wrestling is going to play a little bit of a factor here because it's going to open up the striking for him, make him a little bit more dangerous on the feet. But I don't feel that even if he gets the takedown, I don't think he can hold Jackson down in one spot and control him. I think that Jackson scrambles pretty nicely, gets to his hip, gets back up. I also feel he uses the whizzer very effectively. He has very good wrist control, whether he's on the bottom or he's in the clinch. And I just feel the long, straight shots, his movement, his speed, his accuracy is going to cause a lot of issues for somebody like Barcelos to make it even very difficult to get in that deep to get takedowns. Barcelos, for him to have success with his wrestling, he's going to have to get in deep on those shots. And I just feel that him rushing forward, I just don't know a way that he's going to get in and close the distance without getting hit, because I feel Jackson's going to be just like a sniper in there. He's going to pick him apart as he comes forward. Every time he takes a step closer within range, I think Jackson is going to catch him. He's going to pick him off. And, long story short, I just feel Jackson's going to get it done. He's got too much reach. He's pretty athletic, has good movement, and with the wrestling, I feel that he can nullify that with his movement, and he also has good takedown defense as well. So I'm going to take Montel Jackson to get it done.
And next up at UFC Fight Night Sterling, taking on Zalal, we've got Adrian Luna Martinelli taking on Davey Grant. And let's talk about Davey Grant, obviously coming off of his last loss against Jourdain, getting guillotined. He did get hit with a flying knee before that. Davey Grant, decent kickboxer, obviously not a guy that's known for his jiu-jitsu, but he has been working heavily on his takedown defense and his grappling throughout the course of his career. Moved over to Las Vegas to train over at Extreme Couture, and I think that move has served him well. Obviously, there's no shame in losing to a guy like Jourdain. Obviously, he was able to beat Damon Blackshear and Raymond Tavares, but I think in that stylistic matchups against Tavares and Blackshear, they're very one-dimensional fighters. He only had to worry about the takedowns and the grappling of Damon Blackshear. He only has to worry about the boxing of Ramon Tavares. And when we talk about Adrian Luna Martinelli, he is very well-rounded. 17-1, a guy that has good jiu-jitsu, good wrestling, will mix in the level changes. And on the feet, he is very well-versed everywhere. Muay Thai style, will attack the lead leg, will kick upstairs, attack the body with nice teeps up the middle. And I think as well, the hands, even though they're not necessarily all that powerful, I think that height and that reach and that whip that he gets in some of those shots with the hands are going to be a problem here. He's very well versed. He can push a pace, put a lot of volume out there. And I think realistically, this fight here is going to come down to the fact that Martinelli can put up a ton of volume. He can mix in takedowns. And I think he's just going to be the more well-rounded fighter. I think on the feet, it's very 50-50. Obviously, Davey Grant does carry some power. He mixes in combinations where he'll go to the body and then come upstairs. And I do think that he obviously has the better level of competition under his belt. When you look at those 17 wins for Martinelli, a lot of them on the regional scene are coming against guys with losing records or very poor level of competition. But I do think Martinelli is a problem here. I do think that he is credentialed in the world of MMA. I do think that his jiu-jitsu as well is also something to watch out for with Davey Grant. A lot of his losses are coming via submission. And I think if Martinelli does a good job here, he can mix in some takedowns, get Davey Grant worried about the takedowns, and then ultimately that'll open up his striking ability. I think on the feet, he could put up a ton of volume, and I think at times Davey Grant can be a little bit lesser output. I don't know if that's because he's reserving his gas tank at the age of 40, but ultimately, give me Martinelli here to get this one done. I think Adrian Luna Martinelli can put up a pace. I think he can mix in some grappling. And I think ultimately he can keep Davey Grant kind of on the back foot, kind of second guessing what's coming next. And I think on the feet, it's going to be 50-50, but it's Martinelli's ability to kind of mix in the grappling and also use a different variety of attacks here is what's going to ultimately get him the victory. And I think if it comes down to the cardio, I think youth is on the side of Martinelli with that output, which we saw on Dana White's Contender Series, obviously making his UFC debut, coming off of that performance against Mark Vologden, where he had a ton of output and was able to win with the grappling and the wrestling in that fight too. So give me Adrian Luna Martinelli to get this one done. Carlos, who you got, brother?
Okay, and this one, I'm going to take Davey Grant to get it done. Martinetti, he can't allow himself to get hit the way he did by Vologden when he fights Davey Grant. Davey Grant, he hits hard, he comes forward, he's doing everything hard. He's throwing hard kicks, hard punches, and if he hurts you, he does have a high level of jiu-jitsu that he doesn't really use as much anymore because he loves striking. He loves making it a war because he doesn't get hit as often as he should because he's in, out, he throws his hard strikes, he's out of the way. And somebody like Martinetti, he's going to come forward, even though he's technical. And when it turns into a dogfight, Martinetti, he's ready to do he's ready to be a blood and guts warrior, and that's what he showed in his Contender Series fight against Vologden. I think it was a great fight. I thought it was fun for all the fans, but the fact is somebody like Grant is going to take advantage of those situations where you're hurt. Whereas Vologden, he kind of just rushed in and was looking for a finish when he wobbled him and was able to get reversed by somebody like Martinetti. Now, Martinetti can change from that fight to now because it was a war, and you do learn something after hard fights like that. You learn that you don't want to get hit like that anymore, and you're going to go to the gym and you're going to make it work. And, anything can happen because he's a young guy. He's coming up. He can change. He's training all the time. Davey Grant, you know what you're going to get with him. He's fought that way now for the last couple of years, and I just feel that Davey Grant's the type of guy that can take advantage of those openings where he knows he's got you hurt and he can jump all over you, whether it's ground and pound, whether it's submission. He's going to find a way to end it, and if you allow yourself to get hit like that, I feel that Davey Grant's going to capitalize. So I'm taking Davey Grant to get it done.
And next up at UFC Fight Night Sterling taking on Zalal, we've got Rafa García taking on Alexander Hernandez. And I think this is a great stylistic matchup, a great fight here at the Meta Apex. Give me Garcia in this one. I think he can push a decent pace here to really give Hernandez problems. And I think Alexander Hernandez, no secret, this is his weight class. This is where he should have been all along here at 155. And obviously known for kind of having those gas tank issues. And I wouldn't necessarily say that he's fixed all of those issues, but he definitely looks better through a course of a 3-round fight here at 155, obviously coming off of back-to-back stoppage wins. Diego Ferreira, Chase Hooper, obviously the victory that he had over Austin Hubbard along with Kurt Hollabar aren't necessarily anything to shake a stick at, but formidable wins, obviously 4 in a row. But I think we're going to go with Rafa Garcia here. I think when you look at this stylistic matchup, Rafa Garcia is a guy that can really push a pace. He trains at elevation, trains with guys like Corey Sandhagen. And I think here, realistically, he's going to be the better wrestler along with a guy that can put a little bit more output out there. And I think that's what this one's going to come down to. Hernandez in his previous fight showed that he will be the kind of the matador to the bull. He will fight on the outside. He will use his footwork and kind of rely on when his opponent comes in to look look to counter. And I think in this particular matchup, if he does that exact style like he did against Diego Ferreira, although he was able to pull off the victory in that one, I just think here that if he doesn't, kind of move forward, kind of plant his feet in the middle of the octagon and say, I'm not going to back up, Rafa Garcia is going to get ahead on the judges' scorecards. Garcia will want to back you up. He will want to shoot in for takedowns. He will want to mix in that wrestling. He does a good job of mixing in his level changes. When his opponent comes in, they get overzealous. He ducks underneath. And it's the timing of Rafa Garcia's takedowns which enable him to get them. He will do them right at the end of the round as well to kind of signify to the judges that he won those close rounds. And I think with Hernandez here that he might have success early, but I think he'll fade, as I do think that Garcia's cardio along with his wrestling will be the difference in this fight. Hernandez has decent boxing. He has nice kicks as well, but I do think that Rafa Garcia here is going to be one on the front foot. So unless Hernandez can really stop the movement, the coming forward heavy pressure from Rafa Garcia with a straight right and look to counter like he did in his last fight, I think this one should be Rafa Garcia's. I think he's going to be the one that's going to have more volume. He's going to mix in takedowns and kind of just keep Hernandez guessing. And as this fight goes longer, the more I think it favors Rafa Garcia when you look at the history of the gas tanks between these two. So give me Rafa Garcia as the slight underdog here to mix in takedowns, kind of push a little bit more of a heavy pace here and ultimately win this one on the judges' scorecards. Carlos, who you got, my brother?
Okay, in this one, I'm going to take Alexander Hernandez to get it done. I think Garcia, he can be a bit of a problem if he continues to pressure Hernandez in the striking, along with the clinching up against the cage and putting his weight on him, forcing Hernandez to pummel and threaten the takedown, making him have to fight those takedowns, pummel, and, counter strike. I feel that mixing everything together is going to build up that lactic acid, and he's going to make him gas out just a little bit going into round two. And that's probably where it could be a little bit more favorable for somebody like Garcia. But he tends to get a little bit sloppy as well. Even though he'll have the cardio to push forward, it's not pretty sometimes when he's tired. Some people can fight through the fatigue and get it done. But I think Hernandez is actually one of them, and I think that he's probably going to look a little bit sharper than Garcia going into round two, even though he might be tired. And I just feel that Garcia just might be a little over-aggressive. It'll allow Hernandez to get possibly the easier takedowns as Garcia comes in, throwing a little bit, not wild, but just throwing caution to the wind, stepping in, putting his weight behind the shots. It's going to allow Hernandez to get him down. And I feel that the straighter punches, the cleaner punches are going to be land by Hernandez. Not just the cleaner punches, but the striking too. Hernandez likes to mix in those kicks as well. And if he gets in the clinch, he's definitely going knees to the body. So I think that Hernandez mixes up the strikes a little bit better. I think that if he gets Garcia down, he can burn the clock in his favor, make it look like he's been in control for the round, also getting ground and pound, looking good to the judges, and that's how I think he gets it done.
And that brings us to the co-main event here for UFC Fight Night Sterling taking on Zalal. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as we break down Norma Dumont taking on Jocelyn Edwards. And Dumont was supposed to originally be on this card. She was fighting in the co-main event against Yana Santos. Santos, unfortunately injured, having to step away from this one. And Edwards is stepping in now on somewhat short notice. But she's been on an absolute tear here at bantamweight. Finishing her last 4 fights, 4-fight win streak. I think this is a great co-main event here, one not to sleep on. And give me Edwards in this matchup. If you go back and look at Norma Dumont in her previous fight against Ketlin Vieira, it was very, very poor for Norma Dumont. She's known for having high output on the feet with the boxing. She'll tap the low kick. She tends to be more of a volume puncher where, she's kind of getting in women's faces. She's backing them up. She's using her boxing, and she's able to put out a ton of volume. But in that one, she was worried about the takedown. She was getting physically dominated in the grappling. She was being held down and controlled. She was able to squeak out a decision that I think a lot of people might have had, Ketlin Vieira winning. And I just think in this matchup here against Edwards, Norma had to worry a lot about the grappling of Ketlin Vieira, but on the side of Edwards, she's going to have to worry about the striking and the grappling of Edwards. And it goes to show in Edwards' recent performances, when you look, she's able to get women to the ground using body lock trip takedowns. She's very physically dominant, and she's mixing in the striking as well, which is what, she's kind of traditionally known for. She has a nice 1-2 down the pipe. She has good kicks to the body and lead leg. She'll come upstairs with the head kick as well. And I just think that she's going to be able to kind of mix in a well-rounded skill set here against Dumont. I think she's been, kind of underestimated throughout her her career, and I believe she moved over to Extreme Couture and she started to have success. And the real kind of key factor for me for Edwards is that she moved over and started training with Valentina Shevchenko, which I think has really done her good. She's obviously been on a streak since moving over, training with the current champion, and I think that she's definitely getting good sparring rounds in there, and I think that's going to serve her well, especially in this women's division, and that explains the 4-fight win streak to me, all via finish. So I'm going to go with Jocelyn Edwards here. I think she can mix in takedowns like Ketlin Vieira did against Dumont. I think that she can keep her guessing, worrying about those takedowns, and I think on the feet, you're going to see a lot of kicks from Edwards at range, blasting that lead leg of Norma Dumont, which she leans very heavily on because of that boxing heavy approach. And I just think here, 5 years younger as well, with 3 inches of reach, along with the fact that I think she's a little bit more aggressive. She's got a little bit more confidence behind her in terms of winning these fights by a stoppage. And I think if you go back and look at Norma Dumont's previous performances, you can't be confident, especially as the favorite here, in picking Norma Dumont. So give me Jocelyn Edwards here to step in on somewhat short notice and get this one done. I'm going to say unanimous decision. I think it's going to be 29-28. I think we're going to see Norma win a round with her boxing, having a little bit more output, but ultimately I think it's going to be the takedowns that are going to end up winning this one for Jocelyn Edwards if she saw that last fight that Norma Dumont had against Ketlin Vieira. But give me Jocelyn Edwards here in the co-main event. Let's see who Carlos has got in this matchup.
Okay, in this one, I'm going to take Norma Dumont to get this done. I think Dumont is very well-rounded, mixes her weapons very effectively, utilizes small incremental steps, and slightly changes angles, taking her out of range of strikes and making it more advantageous for herself. She likes to stay within boxing range. She's very good at pumping the jab. She fights behind it nicely. It comes out quick, and she does have a nice slick 1-2. In the clinch, she does like to control the posture of her opponents, lands knees to the body, whereas Edwards, she's a very smart fighter as well, and she has gotten better. She throws 1 to 2 strikes at a time, doesn't throw in big combination, but she has been doing very well is mixing her grappling and her striking, and in her last few fights, it shows that, in the finishes that she's got, 2 of them came from TKO finishes, and 2 of them came from submissions. And it's because she's a little bit more unpredictable to her opponents. She's finding her rhythm, and she's starting to mix things up effectively, and it can be confusing for somebody like Dumont. But Dumont, the reason I feel both of these women are technical, but what I feel is going to put Dumont over the top is that she's got that little bit of dog in her. Although she's very technical, she has points where she could be light on her feet and move in and out and change angles and get the nice lateral movement going. She does have good jiu-jitsu. She can out-grapple her, but she does have that little bit of dog in her, and she likes to make it a war. Her fights could be easier, but sometimes she likes mixing it up. She likes getting in a little bit of a back and forth, and I feel that that's something Edwards doesn't want to have to be in. I think she likes a little space, and I think she likes to come in and grapple when she's ready to, but I don't think she likes to be forced to get into a little bit of a battle. So if Edwards starts mixing things up a little bit better and starts to get the best of Dumont, I think Dumont can just step it up a little bit and start to be a little bit more of a dog in there. And I think that's what's going to put her over the top. I think technically she still stays technical, but she just comes forward with the aggression, and she comes forward and she doesn't eat a lot of shots. So I think that's going to be the deciding factor, and that's why I'm going with Norma Dumont to get it done.
And that brings us to the main event here for UFC Fight Night. Sterling taking on Zalal. And we've got Aljamain Funkmaster Sterling, the former bantamweight champion, taking on Yusuf, the Moroccan Devil Zalal. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as we break this one down. And give me Zalal in this matchup. This guy's been on an absolute ascendancy since joining or rejoining the UFC. Obviously still only 29 years old. And I think at this weight class and at this current moment in time, I like Zalal to make a nice title run here, and obviously a big step up in competition here, taking on Funkmaster Sterling. But let's talk about Zalal. He has nice movement on the outside, very light on his feet, and I think the speed difference here is going to be a factor. And if you look at Aljamain Sterling, although he has good wrestling, I think on the feet Zalal is going to be too quick, too sharp with good footwork here, and I think that's going to be the real factor in this matchup. Obviously Aljamain Sterling, he wants to look to get you to the ground. He has that funky style of wrestling and also a very unorthodox way of striking as well. He wants to be able to take you to the ground. He wants to be able to take your back, kind of sink in the rear naked choke. He wants to get in the hooks and control you from there. And I think realistically, this fight's going to be a tale of two halves. I think we're going to see Sterling ultimately get some takedowns, but I do think that Zalal's grappling is really heavily improved. And he's talked about that in previous matchups since rejoining in the UFC, that he's worked heavily on his wrestling. He's worked heavily on his grappling. And I think that he's going to do a good job here of creating scrambles to get back to his feet. Standing obviously 3 inches taller than Aljamain Sterling here. I do think that size here at this weight class, obviously Aljamain, a former bantamweight, might play a factor, especially when it comes to going for takedowns against the taller Zalal. We know it's a lot harder to take down some of these taller opponents. And I do think that Zalal here has decent scrambles to be able to get back to his feet. He just needs to be mindful of giving up his back against a guy like Aljamain Sterling, which we've seen in the past be able to backpack people, along with finding those rear naked chokes. So as long as Yusuf Zalal does a good job of being, mindful of giving up his back in scrambles, I think he should be absolutely fine here. We saw in Zalal's, one of his recent performances, darting around on the outside against Calvin Kattar, circling. He made that fight boring, but let's be honest, that's going to be a great style here against a guy like Aljamain Sterling, who's going to pressure forward, look to back him up against the fence, and ultimately shoot in for blast doubles. He has a nice timed knee, Zalal. He has a nice jab. I think he's going to be faster, more crisp on the feet, and I think if he can stuff some takedowns here, he'll win this one on the judges' scorecards based off of damage, based off of, the kind of winning the striking exchanges. He just needs to basically fight a smart fight here against Aljamain Sterling. Don't throw spinning attacks, kind of leave the kicks at home. Stick to the boxing and create scrambles with your jiu-jitsu here. Keep this one on the feet, ultimately winning a unanimous decision here. I could see maybe Sterling winning a round, maybe two with his wrestling, but ultimately I think it's going to be the footwork and the speed of Yusuf Zalal here to get this one done. I think, since this guy's been in the UFC, he's obviously finishing lower level guys, and obviously, you could argue that Josh Emmett isn't necessarily on the best trend right now, but Zalal's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. He's coming in, he's finishing guys on the feet, he's finishing them on the ground. Obviously a guy that's confident, a guy that is, on an ascendancy in the UFC. Aljamain Sterling at 36 years old, bantamweight or featherweight, you don't really want to be backing guys at 36 years old at these smaller weight classes. And I think that Zalal here is going to ride that momentum here into another victory with another decent name under his belt. And let's see who Carlos has got in this matchup.
Okay, in this one, I'm going to take Aljamain Sterling to get it done. I think that Yusuf Zalal, he can use the same tactics he's been using since his return to the UFC. He can stay outside, use the speed, use the accuracy, land from the outside, pot shotting and circling around the cage, forcing Aljo to chase him, but, and land into something heavy. But, Aljo's fought good strikers before. And what he's done before in the past to get past the striking is he would just use high volume. He would outstrike the striker, and he doesn't make it a brawl. What he does is he just throws more strikes to close the distance and get inside and then look for those takedowns. But lateral movement of Zalal is going to cause a huge problem for that. He's going to make it very difficult for Sterling to keep him in one spot. And what I think is, for Sterling to be able to close the distance, to cut off the cage, he's going to have to start attacking the legs early. He's going to have to force Zalal to be able to endure those kicks and have to keep that movement and have to use. Don't go to the body too much. Somebody as fast as Zalal, as soon as you change levels to go to the body with strikes, he's going to attack. That counter is going to be there. And he's too quick to do that. But what you can do is use your lower body, use the kicks, attack the leg, attack the body with your legs, and, pressure, more volume, close the distance, force him into the clinch, and then impose your game. And since Aljo's been able to do that, once it gets to the ground, I feel that Aljo's not going to get the finish right away or at all, because Zalal's very educated on the ground, and he can scramble, and he has good hips on the ground. But I feel that Sterling's not going to get a lot of ground and pound, on the ground. He's going to have to close all the gaps and keep himself tight and keep the top pressure, the hip pressure down on Zalal. So it might be that he's going to win the rounds by control, but at some point Zalal's going to slow down. When you're attacking the legs and you're forcing him to grapple, he's going to slow down a little bit, and I think that's going to play into Aljo. And they call him the Funk Master for a reason, because in wrestling, when they say you have the funk, that's that strength that they can't explain. And once Aljo gets a hold of you, you're going to have a hard time getting the separation, getting the distance. And I feel that Aljo, it's going to happen. He's not a slow guy. He's a good athlete. He's going to be able to close the distance. He's done it before, not against someone with the speed and change of direction like Zalal, because Zalal can kind of stop on a dime and change directions. But I think if you attack the legs early, which Aljo is most likely going to do, and just come in with high volume, forcing Zalal to step back, and when you're fighting backwards, it's to the other fighter's advantage. And I feel that Aljo's going to be able to close that distance, and he's going to be able to control Yusuf Zalal. So I'm going to take Aljamain Sterling to get this one done for those reasons.
And there you have it, folks. Full card breakdown here for UFC Fight Night Sterling taking on Zalal. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button and check out some of our other videos on the channel. We've got Dog of the Week. That is going strong. We've hit 3 of our last 4. Unfortunate not to cash last week. Looking to get back in the win column there. We've got quick picks. We've got full card betting guide. And if you're enjoying the content, you know what to do. We're almost at 500. Help us get there. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.